Hello, and welcome to the first review that I'm going to be doing on a video game, and it's not gay. So I normally do romance book reviews, but I have played a video game so recently that I just need to talk about it. It's not good. So the game in question we're going to be talking about today is Monster Crown. Monster Crown is a monster taming game that came out in 2020 that took the Game Boy Color style Pokemon games and gave it a darker storyline. While that might be oversimplifying things, it fits for what I liked about the game for the most part. Before we get into my opinions about the game, I do want to go over some dates and my overall experience with the game, and most of this information I grabbed from Google, so if any of it's incorrect, I do apologize, but I try to do my best when I'm trying to look up dates and information, and one of these is going to be my own recollection, so I might be wrong on that end, but as far as I can tell, the initial release date for Monster Crown was June 16th, 2020. And the Steam release date was a little later after that, about a month and a half later, in July 31st of 2020. It released on the Switch as a physical, as far as I can tell, physical release on October 12th, 2021. I purchased it later that year on December 15th, 2021. And I vaguely remember starting it around that time. Maybe January or so. I remember starting it, but never saving, doing much. I just kind of started and be like, oh, this looks cool. I streamed it for the first time on May 16th, 2023. And that is, as of recording this, just about 4-ish months ago. And I'm now talking about it in September, and we'll get into that in a minute. There was a tweet about the 1.051 update, which supposedly fixes the in-battle freezing glitch on May 14th, 2023. The patch is available on the Switch on May 25th, 2023. I haven't seen any updates on the PS4 or Xbox versions as of a tweet on June 27th, and it has still not been updated on the PS4 and presumably Xbox, but I have no way of checking as I do not have an Xbox. The devs did say that they can't say why, but there have been snags they need to work out. On July 25th, 2023, Sodesco announced a 1.0.55, a new patch for Monster Crown, but doesn't address the PS4 or Xbox patch 1.0.51, which is still, as far as I know, has not come out. There have been a couple of tweets for PS4 and Xbox players reporting the same issues. One Steam user can't open the game after the 1.0.55 update. So there's still some bugs that they need to work out here. I can't say why they haven't worked them out, but I'm not a game dev, so I don't know. But what I find interesting, and this is concerning me specifically, is that a card game Kickstarter was launched and announced on April 27th, 2023. For what purpose? For why? Like, why have they announced a card game Kickstarter when the game that is a physical launch is unplayable on the Switch, the PS4, and the Xbox? Like, is this just to get additional money? Is this to raise funds for the Monster Crown IP? I don't know. But, you know, the Monster Crown game, despite having a physical launch on Switch, Xbox, and PS4, for the vast majority of them, are still in a buggy and unplayable state. Even after the 1.0.51 patch, it's still a buggy and unplayable mess at times. So that kind of concludes my overall introductory thoughts about this game, but there are some things I do want to go into. So let's start off by talking about the gameplay. So the gameplay of Monster Crown is heavily inspired by Pokemon. I would say that is true. There's a new coat of paint on basically a lot of the functions and types and words that are used in Monster Crown that aren't in Pokemon, and there's a lot of details that are going to be different than Pokemon than they are in Monster Crown. So we'll just touch on them one by one. So, instead of catching like we have in Pokemon, we have forging packs. A pact with a monster is essentially the same thing as catching it, so in order to do this, you use a scroll. As far as I can tell in my personal gameplay, I have found 3 types of scrolls. We have normal scrolls, supreme scrolls, and ultimate scrolls. The way you catch monsters is similar to Pokemon, and from what I can tell in my one gameplay of this, is that the lower HP the monster has, the more likely the scroll or the pact is able to work in. Making packs, though, is not really the main point of the game, and the monsters you get generally from making packs are pretty terrible. There's not a lot to them in terms of stats. They're generally weaker than what you can do later in the game, and there's one main point to making packs with monsters, and that is to be able to breed them. So let's talk about breeding. Breeding is unlocked somewhat late in the story on both aspects I'm going to be talking about. So you unlock the ability to breed your monsters after you rescue your father from a Kalur, which is a monster I love and hate, more on that later, from his trip to get cigarettes or trip to do something. He's off on an adventure. I think he's going to the Empathy Kingdom. The plot I don't really pay much attention to, so I apologize about that. But in the beginning, once you get the ability to breed after going through the hurdles that you need to do to get it, it is hot garbage. It is the worst thing I would ever say because you don't get any control over what gets passed down. And I could understand that's an aspect of the game that they want you to kind of have some experimentation with beforehand, kind of get a feeling of what the breeding mechanic is going to be like, but it's not what I would say is good. So the breeding mechanic is that the first monster provides certain stats and the second monster provides the other stats. So in this case, in the very beginning, it's very basic. The first monster will do something like HP, the second one will do attack, the first one will do defense, the second one will do magic, back and forth. It's alternating every single one, back and forth, which isn't the worst, but it's very limiting. You get that one gene selection option. There's no other genes you can check. You can't do anything else. So it's fairly limiting in the beginning. You can, however, change what each monster will provide depending on what position they're in with the Gene Lab, which is required in order to make decent monsters to help you carry in the final part of the game, like the final boss level spike. Now, I am a novice to Monster Crown. I will fully admit that. I've only played it fully once, and I will never play it again. But the fact that I can't select what monsters pass down what until basically the end of the game is ridiculous because I can't get monsters to what I need them to be until it's basically the end of it. And essentially, with monster breeding, you're taking the two monsters and mashing them together, ultimately resulting in sometimes, for the most majority of times, new forms. And this could be new forms based on different elements or types that the monsters are getting inherited with. The color palettes can also be inherited. The stats obviously can be inherited. The monster's base form can also be inherited. So you can kind of mix and match and have a lot of customization on what you want your monster to look like in terms of their palettes, their types, their base designs, and stuff like that. But the fact that you get this at the end kind of diminishes how great the mixing and matching of the monsters and their new forms are, because if you have a sick looking monster form with terrible stats, it's no good. For example, if you want to breed with like a Kalur, it has terrible speed, like completely terrible speed. So if you have it in the wrong position, the new monster you have might look amazing, but it's going to have terrible speed. And like the fact that this is locked, like the best part of this, the fact that you can then select what genes you want and how you want your monsters to look and what types there are and what the color palettes are and stuff like that, all the fun stuff is locked right up until the end of the game. Like once you get to the last city, that's where the whole thing comes down. The whole plot resolves itself essentially, and you can entirely skip the entire Gene Lab because it's not required to go to. So you could have pathetic monsters and try and take on a boss who's got, ridiculous amounts of HP. So let's talk about the battling for now. Battling in Monster Crown is almost identical to Pokemon. There's a couple of new features here. There's a couple of new gimmicks. The types are different, of course, but it's the same turn-based combat as Pokemon. So if you've played a Pokemon game, you can be fairly confident in your abilities to pick up Monster Crown. I say fairly because as someone who's played Pokemon for the better part of his life, there are still times where I don't remember anything about the typing in Monster Crown. So let's talk about the typings. There are 5 types. They are denoted by colors: red, blue, yellow, green, and purple. Black, it's hard to distinguish it, but the 5 types are will, brute, malicious, unstable, and relentless. And the type chart is as follows. Will beats brute, brute beats malicious, malicious beats unstable, unstable beats relentless, and relentless beats will, which in turn completes the cycle and beats brute. Each move has a type, each monster has a type, pretty similar to Pokemon so far. They follow a type circle like this, it probably would have been on screen already. They follow a type cycle like this. It is cyclical. The reverse order is their resistances. So if you go opposite the wheel, you'll get their resistances. I had both of these images open on my phone because picking a monster to use, I can't recall who's good against what because it's different, sure, and there's a learning curve, yes. And at the end, I was able to get through it without having the image open on my phone. But in the beginning, they really don't do a good enough job of showing and showcasing what is good against what. They have it in the game. You can can pull up your like journal and find it. It's in the game itself, and it denotes it the same way with the colors, so you can kind of get an idea. But sometimes I just would always blank. I'm like, what am I dealing with? What do I need to send out? The new feature introduced in Monster Crown that makes it different from Pokemon is Synergy. This is where you can defend or switch your monsters to increase the bar, and if you get it maxed and then switch, you can go essentially Super Saiyan and do massive damage. Even just stocking 1 or 2 synergy points can be enough to turn the tide of battle easily. One, I believe, gives you like 1.5 times your next attack. The second stage is like 1.5 times your next magic attack, which is interesting because they do have physical and magical attacks as well. So you have to kind of play to your strengths. If you're using a magic-based monster, getting to that second level, it's a little bit of a risk and reward system. Do you defend for 2 turns? Do you switch into something first so you can switch into the monster? You put in one, you put in the second, you go to the third, and then the third just, demolishes them. Stuff like that. So the text info at the bottom scrolls if things happen, like if you get an infection, if you get your stats lowered or stats raised. It's fine, but it really slows down when it loads, and you kind of have to mash the A button to get through it, which kind of just slows down the combat. I mean, I had the same problem with Pokemon when they go through and do their so-and-so is paralyzed. Will they be able to attack? That kind of stuff. Also, the enemy tamer monsters switch way too fast. They are switching in nanoseconds, and I'm literally mashing the A button to get through it, and I look up and there's just suddenly a new monster that I'm not aware of. And that's the other thing, is obviously when you have your monsters out, you can switch, the enemy can switch, but every single time, without fail, the enemy will switch into the type that they know will either resist your move or be good against your type. Sometimes both, which is, I say, a bit unfair at times. When your monsters are struggling to do much damage, you kind of need them to do everything that they can, but I'm getting off topic. So the level caps are gated behind how many chief tamers you have defeated, which influences your tamer rank, which means grinding to get higher levels is not always possible. For example, if you only have tamer rank 2, your highest level, I believe, is 19, which means if you are grinding, you can't get past level 19, which is fine because your monsters don't evolve like they do in Pokemon, so you don't need to evolve them to get them more stats, but it does make it so that they are basically prohibited from getting to a higher level. And I understand why, but I wish it wasn't limiting in that sense. Because grinding, in and of itself, is a chore. If you have the EXP share on, your monsters will be getting somewhere between 1 to 4 EXP per fight. If you turn it off and only use one monster to fight with, they'll be getting 20 plus EXP from that same monster. So the way they do EXP share is they take the EXP that the monster would give you and divide it by how many monsters you have, which is true for the entire game. At the end of the game, I'm fighting hard monsters. I'm still getting, albeit a bit more, but now I'm getting 10 to 11 EXP per fight. But if I were to take that off, one character is now getting 80 to 90 EXP. So grinding in this game is obviously not what they want you to do. The last thing I want to touch on here, and I could have probably put this in the next section, but I feel like this fits more with the gameplay, is the user interface. God, does it suck. I can save my game, and if I'm standing in front of somebody, it'll open the same dialog box or the dialog box for that person with one A press. And then once I get out of that dialog box, then the game says it's saved. So it doesn't work. It is not optimized. And I have done this, if I'm saving in the breeding area, I will be in the breeding menu. And then when I leave, it says, oh, your game is saved. It doesn't register that you're in a menu all the time. And I think that's strange. The whole menu, though, as a UI is slow and clunky. Sometimes it doesn't feel like when I press a button, it does anything until I do it again, and then it does it twice. The responses are not fast. They do not come as they should, and I do not think it's laid out in a way that makes the most sense with the icons and everything like that. Once you get more access to stuff in the game, your menus expand, and then it becomes a bit more confusing, especially when you think the save icon is a save icon, but it's not. I'll show the menu here, and I'll label what everything is, but it is not a good menu system in my opinion. Now that I'm done talking about the gameplay, let's talk about the visuals. I think the pixel art is pretty solid. The monsters are monsters. Some are cute, sure. I mean, some of them look like they're just pixels on a screen, but I like them. They look cute. Some look like they're gonna make nice house pets, while some look like they'll ruin your village, steal your partner, and slam you against the wall. Oh, sorry, wrong game. Some look like they'll raise your village down, and some actually do. If you do some side questing, you can see that monsters are actual fucking monsters. They will destroy your town. They will destroy your house. They will rampage if they need to. They actively chase you to fight, and they act like they should. If it's Monster Crown, these are actual monsters. Now, there were several issues with visual glitches that I found during the game, some of which I'll be able to show here. So at the end of the game, when the map, I'm assuming, expands because there's another island down south, which I've never been to and I never will play again, so I'm never going to see it, I realized that the map is just loaded over the farm background, but like the farm map, if you will, like if you took the still image of the farm that you start on, but it's not just a still image because the water tiles are moving, which means it's loading the map over the farm in real time. I don't understand why you would need to do that. Unless it's calling it to that specific location and that's where it's housed in memory, I don't know. I'm not a game developer, but it seems strange that like the map is overlaid on a moving background of what is the farm. There's also this weird black hole in Frobeck City. The tree doesn't exist. We don't think about the tree. It's fine. Also, speaking of trees, there's a half a tree just randomly missing in a forest. I'm blaming the logging industry on this one. I don't have any other answer besides we just need to build houses and this tree just had to be taken down. There are some small pixel issues which I think are going to be harder for me to point out that are like, I would call artifacting in some locations. They're not horrible to look at. Some visual issues that I had that aren't just like glitches or bugs. Some of the pathways are a little bit difficult to find, specifically to one of the chief tamers. It's alleyway, but it's cast in shadow, and because it's cast in shadow, it doesn't look like you're able to traverse it. And there's another one in another town that I was also very stuck on trying to find as well, just because it doesn't seem like you should be able to walk there. God forbid you do the first one at night, because it's nigh impossible to see that you can walk there, because at night it has a nice day and night cycle, yes, but at night things are just way too fucking dark. I understand what they're going for, but if the city, I can't tell what is the background, what is the foreground, or where is the walkable path, it's a bit rough. I think the text font is fine, but sometimes there's just blanks, like none of the enemies tamers have names, it just says enemy, they don't have names. Some of the chief tamers didn't have names, and I don't know if that's a bug on my end or they're just nameless tamers. There's also some random words that just aren't capitalized. I'm not going to spend my time showing off every one of these, but just small writing and text issues. Let's talk about music and sound. So overall, I would say the music slaps. I think they did a good job on the music. I think most of the songs are enjoyable. They remind me of the Game Boy Color era games, specifically Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal, which I think is where their main inspiration was from. It's nice, except for when it cuts out entirely for no reason at all. Like, listen to this Milltown theme. It's my favorite because, like I said, it reminds me of Gold, Silver, Crystal on the GBA, and I just don't have much to say here. The music is really good. Alright, let's talk about the big elephant in the room, the story. This is by far my most detailed section, and I am just going to read through the notes and kind of give you an overall summary of the story of Monster Crown. Heavy spoilers ahead. I will be spoiling a lot of these and a lot of the plot points, but also I didn't really 100% the game, so there's a lot that I did not do. And I also will admit I chose one route, and so if you want to go back and choose the other, you'll be able to do that. So let's start off with typical like Pokemon. You start off as a kid on a farm, you fill out a questionnaire to get your first quote-unquote starter monster, and you get the basic tutorial of how to make a pact with monsters from your dad. From there, the game opens up as an open world, but not really. You're tasked with going to the Humanism Kingdom in the center section to deliver a pearl to the king for your father. We navigate through the Windy Province, we come across some gangsters who are complaining about some thugs not being as good as them, and our first boss monster, Walrus, which is level 9. There's an NPC here that drops the best tip, but it's treated like such a throwaway line. It says, use infection to decimate bosses with high HP. That is a key tip if you ever are playing the game. Infection can just decimate bosses. It won't kill them because it's gonna get weaker as the less HP that they have, but in the beginning, it lobs off big sections of HP. As we enter Milltown, we get some cutscenes regarding to the shop where we get our backpack, we get to call our dad and tell him that we made it. Alert we get though outside the shop tells us to remember dad's request and call him from inside the shop, but the phone is outside. I called him first. The shopkeep says, oh hey, we don't have a phone in here, the phone's outside. I know sir, I already did that. We then get introduced into the healer of the game, the quote-unquote Pokemon Center. It's a tamer and his Kiri who charges money to heal our team. I keep calling him Kirby, so if you hear me saying Kirby healed me, just know that I'm talking about Kiri. theory. In Milltown, we hear some rumors of Jasper and how the townspeople despise him for being greedy, which is fair. We do defeat him in battle and get our first tamer rank, as he is, of course, the chief tamer. Jasper, embarrassed by his defeat by a child, flees the town, gets onto a boat, and sails out south, and is immediately destroyed and killed by a monster in the water. His child watches. We like this. We also learn about respect points, which are used in breeding, and I think that's about it, but we really don't touch on respect points much. We can now travel through Dew Cave and head on to the other side of the mountain region, landing in the Desperado province, a desert area, where we meet David, who is a man fighting for the good of people. We then head north and meet a tamer who has set up camp and introduced how to camp ourselves. A Tanuk monster is roaming that will and can destroy us, so they urge us to stay on the main path and avoid looking for him. Ignoring the big old monster in the desert, we make it to the crossroads town where we see some thugs enter a bar. We follow them. They proceed to say they're going to tear my head off and kidnap us, leading us out of town. David steps in to rescue us from them. We then meet Beth, who is the main antagonist of the game, who absolutely destroys us with Bant, her monster. We are captured by Beth and the thugs, who tie David and I up, or David and the character up, into some basement. Beth accuses David of working with someone, having money, being in league with somebody, and he obviously denies it. So then, what does she do? She decides to take her monster to maim the both of us, and threatens to kill us unless David tells her who he's working for. He summons his own monster, Ozomon, and we're rescued. We make camp and tend to our wounds, and then get a decent art of the cutscene before us, which is nice. As we make camp for the night, we wake up and we see a weird monster on the shoreline, and we get a dream egg, and then I proceed to do nothing with it in the playthrough. I don't know what it does, I could care less. David leaves us, magically healed, and we find ourselves back in Crossroads Town after a small cutaway. We then get the ability to fast travel, which is nice. I stumbled upon a farm of Lati and do my first side quest, which is rounding up one of their missing herd from a couple of monsters. We tackle Devin in the area, who is the next chief tamer we need to defeat. We do, not after losing first, and this is where Infection is big. It hits and does damage for the fight, and we squeak out a win. Infection is key. Heading up north through the Scarred Province, we are stopped because we never got a tutorial from our mom. Thanks, Mom. There's a guy hired by King Tenna to remove a Brutus who is blocking the road, and while we can clearly walk around him, the guy will prevent us from battling Brutus or moving around him until we get the Synergy tutorial from our mom. I left her hours ago. So we go back home, we do just that, we get a Synergy tutorial from our mom, and then we fight Brutus, who, even beating, barely gives us 80 XP. Now we can go into the Humanism Kingdom proper. We can deliver our gift of the Pearl to King Tenna from our father Isaac, and you know, King Tenna, friends of our father. Cool. Did not know that. He wants to talk to us after about our father Isaac, and then we take Meryl and the king down to the farm on a wagon where we can reminisce and talk about monster taming, the history of the land. We get some backstory here. There's a war where the three kings fought in, and our father, who opted not to be a king, decided to live his life on a farm. When we do make it back, we find our father's missing. He's gone off to get some cigarettes and he's never returned. He went to the Wayward Wood, probably to find cigarettes, and we gotta go find him. We get a canoe and a tutorial on how to use special abilities in the overworld. We then are able to find the forest, explore it, and find out our dad is under attack by a Kulur. This Kulur proceeds to outspeed me and decimate my entire team. I am outraged because when I made a pact with this Kulur, its base speed growth rate is 0.1, which means it should be slow as fuck. I do some grinding, which sucks because then after we rescue our dad Isaac, we get the ability to breed. I am a monster fucker after all, and this is what I've been waiting for. I do the breeding, I continue with the plot after that. So the king mentions during our kind of farewells after rescuing our father that we aren't aware of the nation's history, and our dad said we weren't ready for it. I'm 14, Dad. I'm ready to learn about war. The king thinks we'll be a champion of our generation and gives us a note for the Empathy Kingdom, where we'll be heading to next. We go through the Frost Province and the Flowering Province to make it to Appenton, completely missing Frobeck City. There's not much to do in Appenton since I am still a baby level 2 tamer rank, and I have missed, at this point, 3 chief tamers: the Humanism Kingdom, Frobeck City, and now Appenton now, because I just am not looking for them, because they're not in buildings, and I don't know where the fuck they are. We make it to the Undergrowth Pass, and solve a puzzle before encountering a Vera, who is level 38 to my level 8 to 26 team. Using my starter Ambigu, I slime slap it down, reducing its resistance, and barely live a Flora Beam, capturing a boss monster at the end of this, which is the monster that will carry me through the rest of the game, basically. I make it to the Empathy Kingdom, and get instructed to breed a Generation 4 monster before I can do the plot, so I do just that. I go back back to the farm, I breed some monsters, getting involved myself. I then have access to the Duchess's gardens in the southeast of the Flowering Province. I explore the castle, and unfortunately, I get stuck in an inescapable position, having to reset my game and redo the breeding process all over again. Now that I can enter the Duchess's garden for the second time, I somehow fight the Duchess, sure, and then I get captured immediately by exiting the entrance. I glitch the game because I saw I was surrounded, and I run back inside, but somehow still end up being captured. But because I glitched it, I can move freely, so I do so, and I completely fuck up the scene. Go me. This gangster thinks that I'm a thug, and I'm the opposing team, which is why they captured me. We fight the gangster, and I get decimated because my team is barely in the 16s, while Vera's at level 38. I also can just run from the battle and continue the cutscene, which is great, so that's fine. The gangster lets us know that Beth is evil. No duh. And they're tracking her down to see what she wants to do. No duh. The thugs are her personal army. Again, no duh. There are 4 cities with strange monsters who are guarding energy. Frobeck, Neokio, Appleton, and Houston? I am not clear as the cities aren't mentioned by name, but by markings on the map, there were only 3 of them. There is the Frobeck Guardian, the Appleton Guardian, and the Neokio Guardian. There's technically a boss fight in Houston that is not the end boss, so maybe that is the Guardian? I don't know. But in Frobeck, we defeat Chief Tamer Rodney and get the Guardian. We see Beth in a pentagram, presumably summoning Satan herself. In Appleton and Neokio, we also have a little bit of story in there. There's some side characters who I don't really care, and I don't think are named that well, or I don't remember their names at all. But we get 2 more Guardians, and that's 3 out of the 4 that we got. We got 3 Guardian powers and their elemental properties. I don't know why we had to get them, but sure. We take on a Chief Tamer whose name I do not know in Neokio, and lose. I heal, I retry it, I barely eke out a win, and we are now at Tamer rank 4. I try to go to Houston, getting lost in the underwater pass cave system as there are some gangsters who are blocking the path because of a shipment that they're waiting for it to come through. This is when I actually learned about using abilities. I didn't realize I could, because when I got taught the special skills tutorial, it was for a canoe, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna get items, maybe like ropes or ladders or something, but no, I get elemental properties. So I figure out the puzzle and I get through. I am on the other side, which is the Ocean View Woods on the island of Houston, I believe. I see some thugs trying to stop the gangster's shipment of weapons. The thugs go down easy, I don't even have to fight them, and they're happy to see me. The gangsters are so overjoyed that I'm here. David shows up though, and is all like, they're bad people, and you shouldn't trust them. So when given the choice, I tell David, I'm gonna side with the gangsters, cause, you know, fuck being good. I want to be on Team Rocket. A notice shows up though, before I make this choice, that neither party will be happy with my choice, so I decide to stick with it and side with the gangsters, as you do. David goes off and calls me disgusting, saying I tricked him, and I'm like, David, I met you twice, like, calm the fuck down. David is now tied up, and we meet Aber, not sure on names, the leader of the gangsters, who is adorable, and I love him. David's pissed, as he should be, but the gangsters and I want to take down Beth, so we do. That's our goal. We go back to Houston, I enter the cafe and leave. The scene still triggers, so I am talking to thin air to a staff infection, and I am thoroughly lost at this point because I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing or what the scene is supposed to be playing, because again, I glitched it. So I stumble into the lab, capture Badia, and then I lose to Beth. I rage quit that stream because I was over the fucking moon when I saw that Bant has 5,000 HP, and I am sitting here at a cool 700 or so, if that. So I decide to do some stuff. Off stream, I breed some new monsters now that I have unlocked the Gene Lab, and I raise my Tamer rank to 7. Round 2. I don't catch Bedia because I OHKO it with some monster. Beth shows up, steals the crystal, the one that the scientist was using to summon Bedia, I guess. She has now all 4 of them, and then we fight her and Bant, and we destroy Bant. We win, but Beth flees. So we fly to the Charity Kingdom, we enter the battle, we fight David and Ozomon because he's a jealous little bitch, and that we weren't his BFF5 ever. We go inside the castle. We see that Beth is some sort of demon lord from another realm. Beth gets her ultimate power form and gets transformed into a monster-human hybrid, and I'm jealous. Apparently, we also have a lust for power and get transformed into a demon, but the change is quite sad, and I didn't realize that we had changed at all when I was streaming this. We fight the demon monster Beth hybrid and slay her. The demon lord says to seek him out in hell if we are what we truly seem to be, and that we could make a fine king, a fine young king, he says. David is still jelly and calls us selfish bastard that he'll come and kill us. Good luck with that, David. We leave the castle as the monster Ozomon appears before us, and then we Thanos dust him into oblivion. David shows up and calls us a bastard again, and that he'll never stop coming for us. And I quote, I will come for you, and I will keep coming for you, no matter how many times you defeat me or kill me. Kinky, David, go off it. We walk away, and then hard cut to credits. That's it. That's the entirety of the plot. There's a lot that I missed, but it is what it is, and that's all I can say. This game is a hot mess. final thoughts. Should you play Monster Crown in 2023? The answer is no. I don't think you should play Monster Crown in 2023. I don't think you should play Monster Crown in any year. I don't think this game has enough different about it to make it decent. I think it is an enjoyable experience. I do not enjoy the bugs that I had to deal with. I do not enjoy how frustrating the level walls or level spikes were. I do not enjoy how the menu and UI are not worth it to navigate and are difficult and unresponsive at times. Breeding monsters is fun. I really love breeding monsters, but it comes too late and you get the stat changing abilities way too late in the game, and it's just not worth it. I am not glad that I played this game. I will probably never play it again. I don't mind spending money on it because it's been years now, and past me can be mad. Current me is just kind of whatever. That's my thoughts. I don't think this is a game that anyone should be playing, period. I don't think this game is worth it. If you have this game, I'm sorry. I hope it's a better experience for you than it was for me. I would appreciate your feedback if you think maybe I'm wrong in any of these aspects. I would love to start a discussion on if you like the game or if you didn't like the game. Maybe I'm just me and I'm not, this wasn't my intended game. Who knows? But anyway, thank you again so much for chilling, listening to me ramble about this for 30 minutes or so. Who knows? I'm gonna have to edit this down. But yeah, for those of you who are new, I am a gay romance book reviewer. I do that primarily. I stream on Twitch nightly. I have Twitter where you can read my unhinged thoughts and probably just see a lot of not safe for work images. And I have a Patreon. If you feel like you want to support me on Patreon, feel free. I do want to give a big shout out to my patron Potato Kingdom. They have been supporting me month over month, and I appreciate their support. So thankful that you guys believe in what I do. Hopefully this video, is enjoyable, catches your attention, and I'll see you guys hopefully in the next one. I honestly don't know if I'm going to do another video game review, but Monster Crown stuck with me, and I couldn't not think about it for the longest time. So yeah, we're going to end it here. Stay safe out there. I love you all so much, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.